Hello, and welcome back to Health and Wealth. I'm Ana Ramos, and I am really glad you're here today. I want to begin with a question we rarely slow down enough to ask. What does success actually require over time? Not the day you arrive, not the moment something goes right, but the years in between. So much of what we are taught about success today focuses on the outcome. They say about visualize it, manifest it, push harder. But what is often missing from that conversation is the structure that has to exist underneath. The mindset that sustains the effort, the discipline that does not come from punishment, and the relationship with the body that makes long-term success possible at all. That is why I find myself returning again and again to athletes. Not because they win, but because they understand process. Athletes understand something deeply human, that growth involves discomfort, that failure is information, and that success is something you build patiently, deliberately, and in partnership with your body. My guest today, Nelly Pineda, has spent decades working with athletes at the highest levels. And what emerged in our conversation is that the qualities athletes develop, the mindset, the intentional goals, the discipline consistency are not exclusive to sport. They're a universal life blueprint. They shape how we lead, how we work, how we relate to money, how we care for our health, and how we define success without abandoning ourselves along the way. Nelly, welcome so much to Health and Wealth. I'm so excited to be able to have you here with us. I was actually telling my team, I'm like, I don't know why I'm ending up with so many athletes and people who train athletes. And then in having the conversation with you, I realized why. But first and foremost, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here. I'm very, very excited to just be here and talk a little bit about my experience, my point of view about success and life.
I love it. I think this is going to be like one of my favorite episodes. But then again, I say that about every episode because so many new things come out of them that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm loving that. And one of the things that when you and I talked a little bit about and we came up with the theme of talking about success, like what are the fundamentals, what it takes to be successful. And, one of the things I was so in love with our conversation is that not to knock it down, right? But we talk a lot about manifestation, manifesting success in our lives, manifesting things. And I think there is power to that. But, when I take a look at success, right? And I think that if we're going to manifest success, we fall a little bit short of it because it takes work, right? It's not like I say, hey, I want this athletic body and I'm just going to sit here, manifest it in my life and I'm going to be beautifully built and muscle mass and all that. It takes a lot of hard work. So you train professionals for over 20 years, and obviously you've seen the ups, the downs, the hard moments, the winning moments. What would you say, how would you define success from what you've experienced and what you live and what you teach? And then tell us a little bit about what it actually takes to be successful.
In sports, I always think about success like a mirror, about success in life. And it's kind of actually the same. What happens in sports, actually what you need, what it takes to be successful in sports, it's definitely, first of all, you have to have a goal. You have to have a goal like in a short-term goal. Because if you have this huge goal, like I want to run a marathon, but it is so complicated and so elaborated that you need to cut it, like in shorter and closer goals so you can reach them and you always have this feeling of motivation. That's also very, very, very important. You have this motivation to just reach that shorter goal, and definitely takes a lot of discipline, because without discipline you can't build, like you said at the beginning, you can't build all these muscles and all this resistance that you need to run. you know? You have to have this discipline so it pushes you to your goals. And you have to have obviously a motivation, but most of all, I think you have to have a lot of resilience, you know?
Yeah.
So you can't, you kind of, obviously it takes a lot of sacrifices whenever you're training, you know, sacrifices as in I have to wake up early and perhaps I'm not staying that long at the party and this and that, you know, like social in the social environment it's very complicated at sometimes. And if you have the right motivation, you know, you're not seeing that as a sacrifice, but
Right.
you're grateful that you actually can wake up in the morning and just go and do whatever you really want to do, you know, what makes you happy at the end.
I think that that's some of the components of success, and I think they're so integral to the formula of success. If we go back a little bit to kind of begin a bigger conversation, right? What would you say success is? How would you define success?
For me, success, or what I've seen with my athletes, is when they are happier, I could say. It's not about how much money they have, about how much, I don't know, a car or this and that. When I've seen them happier or the happiest at all is when they cross a goal, you know, when they finish a race. And because it's just an accomplishment of so many things, you know, the, yeah, success is whenever you're like in an equilibrium, you know,
Mhm.
doing what you really love, what your passion is, what you want to do, but you're not feeling like behind in something, like, as I said, sacrificing things, you know. I don't know if I can make myself clear, but it's like just being in peace, you know. Then that for me is success, because you are in peace, at peace with yourself.
Like what I'm hearing you say is that success is not just something we write, right? It's not just something it's on paper, but success is actually our ability to have a vision, have goals. What are the things we want to be able to accomplish? Work towards it, right? And then at the end, we get that winning, we cross that finish line, right? And what it produces for us internally in our nervous system is this complete set of relaxation, of accomplishment, and that brings happiness to us, right? And that's when we're smiling, even though we just ran a triathlon, a marathon, or whatever it was. Our bodies are exhausted, but we're so happy that we've accomplished it that it kind of takes over the exhaustness that we have physically.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I mean, first of all, you have to have a correct mindset, you know. The mindset defines everything else. Because if, as I said, if you wake up and you say, oh my God, it's so early and and I have to run, that is completely the wrong way to do it, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, and not only for running, I mean, as I said, it's like a mirror of the life, you know. If you wake up every morning and you say, oh my God, I have to go to work and I have to, you know, that's like so heavy on you. So you don't have this, uh, I don't know how to say, I mean, happiness, or you don't have this willingness to do things, you know. You're just feeling like it's an obligation to do though, to do that, whatever you do. And that is really, I believe, the worst case scenario for you to begin a day, you know?
One of the things that I keep coming back to time and time again, and actually had to, after our conversation, I actually began to question myself to say, why is it that I love to work with athletes and business owners and successful people? And then I had to do self-analyzing of that. And I said, wow, it's because of the lessons that it taught us to be, right? So when I look at the athletic environment, for example, right, I think that athleticism And don't worry, I'm going to link it to life in a few minutes. I think athleticism teaches us resilience. It teaches us patience. It teaches us responsibility. Would you say that there's more, like, are those the three main ones? Or would you say there's more to it of what athleticism teaches us?
I always think, like in three different, three main things that for us, um, athletic people are definitely the most important things. And that's, as I said, just have goals, because you need always to know where you're going to. You know, you have to have the correct mindset so you can really try all. I mean, and I'm coming back a little bit more with mindset, but you have to know whenever your original plan fails, then what else are you going to do? And that's for me also everything on mindset, and definitely discipline, just to stick to your original plan,
Right.
and all three together, you learn from a failure, then you know that that's not the end of it, because you have very clear in your mind that you want to just do that. I don't care if it's 1 mile, 10 miles, 100 miles, or whatever, you just know you want to do it.
Yeah.
Whatever the reason is, whatever the original reason is, because there are many of those, but you have a clear goal. And then you have to rearrange your mind and say, okay, I I don't know, I got injured, or I fell, I got sick, or whatever, you just have to rearrange your mind and say, okay, the original plan that was just perfectly planned and everything was going okay, then that's not the one. Okay, what else can I do? Do I have to go to physiotherapy? Do I have to go to the doctor? Do I have to, whatever it takes, But then you rearrange that and you just focus on your goal. And I think that's also in life, it's whenever you're not clear about what you really want, it's just like you're vague and you're just thinking about everything else, and not focusing on what you really want to accomplish. So that's why I always think sports gives you your clarity in your mind.
I think that's so beautiful because clarity is definitely, yes, you can have vision, you can have goals in life, but I think clarity being that third component, it being very clear on what we're trying to accomplish in life or what we want to accomplish in the sport, And I think that when we're clear, you know, those lessons are taught, right? Like resilience happens as a result of being very clear, very focused on what we're trying to accomplish. The patience with ourselves, right? And that's I think that's from a sports perspective, but also in life, right? How many times do we have setbacks in life? And I had a conversation with somebody who I adore like 20 years ago, and she taught me something called shifting gears. And so setbacks are not setbacks until we call them setbacks. But if we call them shifting gears, that's all it is. It's not a setback, right? It's just a shifting gears in life. And it goes back to exactly what you were saying, is that by having goals, by having the mindset, by being clear on them, right? The other components, the lessons learned, which is the resilience, the patience, the responsibility, they naturally happen.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, because I hear so often, now it's like very popular that everybody says, I have to be resilient. I have to be resilient. I have to have patience. I have to, but how? The problem, or it's not a problem, but the question is how? And if you're just focusing on, I have to be resilient, it's like we said at the beginning as well. If you're just saying, okay, I don't know, health in my life, and I want this and that, and you're just thinking about things that you're not doing anything about it, then they won't come to you just because it's magical and you're just so good that you deserve that. I mean, of course not. You have to work for it, And the thing is that the path and the way and the process that brings you to that goal or to that, I don't know. I have a lot of clients that just say, I just want to lose weight, for example, because I want to live healthier, you know. But it's not that they're just sitting there and saying, oh, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight. They're doing something about it. And on the way, on the process, then they are becoming resilient, they are becoming patient, they are becoming, everything that needs to just get to your goal.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. One of the things I was going to say to you is, why is it that those three, because even in our conversation before, in our conversation today, those three aspects, resilience, patience, responsibility, keeps coming up over and over and over again. Why would you say that they work so beautifully, like in synchronicity, in harmony? Why is it that those three components that we learn through this process, why would you say they work so beautifully together?
Why? Because they can't exist without another, I think. Okay. Yeah. You know, resilience comes together. I mean, to get to be resilient, you have to, I don't know, start with being grateful, for example. You know, you, if you really think on a positive way about the things that you can really do, and you stop kind of complaining for what you can't do, something I teach every day to my trainees. I say, just please don't be frustrated about what you can't do, and just be grateful for what you did already. Because if you wake up, that's already something. If you woke up early in the morning, that's already something. That is okay. I did it okay, and I'm not saying that you have to be joyful and everything, because everything you did already, but just to take a look at it, and then your mindset starts telling you you did a good job already, and come on, you can do more. You can do more.
Sorry, I think that's such a beautiful biohack. I just have to say it because, like, as I hear you, Nelly, it's like, oh wow, like that's something I'm going to take back with me to say, rather than say I can't do this, is like just be like everything I've been able to do, and it's mind over matter, right? It's if we can biohack ourselves into continue to work and move forward in life, if we just say I can do this. I've been able to do this and I've been able to do that. So focus on the things that we're able to do versus the things that, not the things that we're not able to do.
Precisely today, I woke up in the morning and I said, oh my God, I just had a surgery on my shoulder like 2 months ago. And I said, oof, today I have a lot of pain and I'm not comfortable today. But immediately what I thought was, there are people waiting for you. There are people waiting for you, whatever you have to say, even if you're saying my shoulder is aching, and teach them that you also have to be patient with yourself. And I was just saying, okay, I want to wake up. It's not that I have to wake up. I want to wake up because I want to meet all the other people who are coming to today to run. And then immediately my shoulder was not so important anymore. There are always things that are better and that are nicer and that are better to think as the bad things. If you focus on my hair is terrible today or whatever, then you'll have a bad day.
I love that. I mean, I think that's such a beautiful biohack. And, it's like, I know that we were talking, I was like, Nelly, think about good biohacks that we can say at the end. But I think that you already share like such a beautiful, not just a beautiful one, but a powerful one. I think that just, because we do talk about positive mindsets and willing positive things in our lives, right? Just like we talk about manifesting success. But I think that we're missing that little component of what it takes to get there. So, and I think that you just saying, you know what? Yes, we all wake up with sometimes we have pains or we didn't sleep good or, you know, anything can happen. Or in an athlete, like I couldn't lift as much today, but wow, thank God that I was able to lift today, or thank God I've been able to lift this in the past, right? And just being grateful. I think that's beautiful biohack. In all your years, because I'm amazed when people can work in their career for 20 years, especially in today's terms, what would you say are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned for yourself by watching athletes go through their process?
Oh God, there's so many, really so many. And that's also why I love to work with people, because every day I get to learn something from them. Like, for example, today, um, somebody came, she was sick for the past week on her stomach. She was not feeling okay, but she showed up, you know, she showed up and she said, I'm not feeling quite okay, but I'm gonna give it a try. Oh God, I love that so much, that you say, I don't have to wait for the perfect moment that I'm feeling 100% healthy. I will just give it a try, you know so then I stayed with her the whole training today, and she was doing more than perfect, and then I said, okay, please, now for the rest of the training, just relax. And she was like, but I think I can do more. And I said, yeah, but you will feel sick then again the rest of the day.
Right.
And her mind and her face, the like, okay, I get that. I love that. you know I love when people really understand that taking care of yourself is the most important thing. Is the
Yes.
most important thing. It's not, I mean, for me, it's nonsense if she would have done, her very best today, and then next week she's feeling sick again, you know? So whenever you really understand that taking care of yourself is the best thing, oh God, today I learned that from her, She really said, that's the best for me. Not for you as a coach, because I always want to see them, running fast and doing more than they can do. What sometimes it's also necessary, but not today, and that she understands that. That's a lesson for me. I can also learn from her that, I don't know, my shoulder today was aching, so I also had to slow down. I'm always trying to learn from them as I teach them, and that when there is a process, when they understand, and then the feedback I'm getting, it's just amazing sometimes.
I think that's beautiful. And it's going back to those basic lessons that you mentioned, those three basic lessons. And that I would say it's above and beyond resilience, because that's like when we keep pushing. But I think you're giving such a beautiful example of what patience is, what is being patient with ourselves, right? And when our minds says, no, you got to push, right? But what it means to listen to ourselves, to respect ourselves, and as a result to have patience with ourselves. I think that's such a beautiful example of what you just shared. And how would you relate all this to life? Like, what would you say, those lessons that you've watched and you've learned and you see people learn through athleticism and through, sports, how would you relate that to life and to living a life of wellness? And, we add the word, we say wealthness because we add the money component to it. But how would you say this lessons of sportsmanship, or it's not even really sportsmanship, it's just lessons of being an athlete, right? How would you say they relate to life?
I totally believe, because before I did this, before I also had like a normal job, and if I would have known what I know now, oh God, my life would have been so different. Why? Because if you learn, like what I said just now, that taking care of yourself is much more important than whatever you can do from yourself and to the world, because if you that sentence that we hear over and over and over and over again, if you're not okay, then anything else around you can be okay. But that is so true, because if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't are patient with you, if you don't know your limits, you're just working and working and working and trying to reach something that perhaps you don't even have clear, that you don't even know. And having I don't know, a huge house, yes, okay, that's very nice, but what did you have to sacrifice for that? You know, perhaps not sleeping, not eating right, and then you have to go to the doctor because you're not healthy anymore. So that for me is not happiness. That for me is not healthy. That for me is not success. Having a big house, but I had to leave behind, I don't know, my health, that's nothing for me. That is nothing for me. So if you are conscious, just conscious that you're working too long, you're not sleeping enough, you are just too much stress, that you have to slow down a bit, just be with yourself and try to understand what you really want and how you really feel. I think that that's in and just in life, I mean, in everyday life, in every day, you just have to make sometimes a pause and think about what have you done right and stick to it.
I think that's a beautiful advice. And like you, right? If I knew everything I know today and applied it to to back then in my corporate career, things would be different. But honestly, I'm very grateful for everything I've been through, right? The heartaches, the tears, the joys, the smiles, the laughter, the connection with people. I wouldn't make it any different. But I think getting to that point, because I have worked with so many people, and I even meet, people across the world, and on paper they look successful. But when you really sit down and have a deep conversation with them, they're tired, they're exhausted, their relationships with others are not well. And sometimes what looks successful, it may not be money successful, right? It's just the appearance that we give. So if someone today looks successful on paper, and everything, you look at them, they're like, okay, they're super successful, but deep inside they've hidden really well the fact that they're exhausted, the fact that they're disconnected from living, from themselves. What advice would you give them?
Oh, stay calm. Just pause for 5 minutes and just be honest to yourself. You're tired. Okay, what makes you tired? I know a lot of people that say, yes, I'm tired, but I have to, I don't know, I have children and, school and boarding and this and that and that. I know, but do they really? I mean, I think there's a very fine line. What people expect from me and what I expect from myself, but really from myself. So, what are you expecting from yourself? Not what people expect from you. What do you want for yourself? That's a very, very complicated question. I know, I know. But as I said, just short goals, short goals. What do I want today for me? What do I want to do for myself now or in the next hour or and I'm certain that that would slow down yourself, your stress and this, and just think for a short time, what do I want for myself in the next 5 minutes, you know? And that's just a gift to yourself.
I think that's so beautiful, Nelly, because I shared in a previous episode that I had, when I entered the financial world. So I was in hospitality for a very long time. Then I entered the financial world, and there was one of the senior vice presidents there that he met with me. He's like, "You got to join us with your experience," and I'm like, "I don't know anything about finances." And then I realized I knew a lot more than what I thought I did. But he said something very important to me, and he summed it up as Woody Woofy. And I looked at him and I was like, Woody Woofy? What's Woody Woofy? And it's, what do you want for yourself? Exactly what you just said. What do you want for yourself? And the whole concept of Amida and looking at the 5 pillars is exactly that. What do you want for yourself? And let's look at the 5 pillars. Let's look like from a health perspective, because sometimes we don't even know where to begin. Even when we ask that question, we don't know where to begin. And I think that if we break it down into, here's health, here's one of the pillars, here's health, here is my career, here are my finances, here are my relationships, here's my personal growth, right? And we start to break down, what do we want for ourselves? I think that the picture of what the vision is, it's there, it gets created. And then it's up to us to make sure that we start working through and creating the goals, the big goals, and the little mini goals is going to get us to the big goals.
Yes, definitely, definitely, definitely. Whenever you run a marathon, back to sports, whenever you run a marathon, that's what usually people, are very familiar with. What I do is ultra running, and obviously, if I just get my shoes now and just run for 10 kilometers, tomorrow I will just, I wouldn't be able to move, because
Yes.
everything is aching and everything. So that's not what I really want. What I want is persistence. What I want is to do that every day. So if I don't know clear in my mind what I really want to do, what I want for myself, I want, I don't know, health. I want just 5 minute rest, or I want whatever. Then you really can focus on that. Again, I come back to goals, short goals. So now I know that I just want that for today. And
Yes.
what I have to do then, so I can do that every day.
I
It's
think
just
that's
very,
I
very small changes and everyday life, so you can really get to accomplish everything you want.
I think that's so beautiful. So we're almost done with our 30 minutes. So before we finish, I know you already gave us one beautiful biohack, which I truly enjoy, because I promise the listeners we'll always do little biohacks, because it's human nature, right? We want to be able to get things. We want to be able to do something today and see results yesterday, right? That's our human nature. And so I completely love and adore the biohack that says, what have I done successfully, right? Like, what's working for me, and focusing more on that versus not the things that we can do. But give us another, you have such great lessons, in training athletes. What's another biohack? Give us one more good biohack before we say goodbye for the day, and just share with the people out there that they can go, oh, that's a good thing to do.
Breathe. Sorry.
Take breath. Take breath.
Take a deep breath, just breathe and just be with yourself. Be with yourself. That is the most amazing and most I don't know, for me is the most important thing during the day is being with myself. Just take a deep breath, inhale, exhale, then you can do the rest. That's it.
That's such a beautiful way to end this conversation, Ellie. And thank you so much for joining us. And I think that those are two very great biohacks to have. And sometimes we just don't take the time to take that deep breath. And one thing I always say is, this too shall pass. So if I go through a frustrating moment, right? How do I build patience? Is by taking breath and saying, this too shall pass.
Just deep breath. Next.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Nelly. It's such
Thank
a
you so
pleasure
much
to
for
have
inviting
you.
me. I
I
really
know that you're
appreciate it.
like in between training one person, the other. So I really, really appreciate you joining us. And thank you for sharing some of your wisdom and your knowledge of all these years of working with people who tend to be superstars because they really push themselves above and beyond.
Yes, they're all rock stars. Believe me, they always do their very best. And I love that.
Beautiful. Well, keep
Thanks
that
for
beautiful
having me.
smile.
Yeah, it was very nice chatting with you.
Likewise, keep that beautiful smile, warm up that shoulder, and this too shall pass.
You shall pass.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you so much. Bye bye.
As I sit with this conversation, what stands out most is how much maturity it brings back into the idea of success. Not as something we manifest from the outside, but as something we cultivate from the inside. And over time, what Nelly reminds us again and again is that athletes do not succeed because they avoid difficulty. They succeed because they expect it. They understand that discipline is not punishment, that resilience is not toughness, and that motivation is something you learn to generate, not something you wait for. They also understand something many of us were never taught, that the body is not an obstacle to success, it is the foundation of it. When we ignore it, when we push past it, or when we sacrifice it for achievement, the architecture eventually cracks. And when we listen to it, when we respect its limits, its rhythms, its intelligence, success becomes something we can actually live inside. And perhaps the most important reframe in this conversation is this: success is not about arriving somewhere. It is about who you become through the process of building, the mindset you cultivate, the goals you choose with intention, and the discipline you practice with self-respect rather than self-betrayal. What makes this an athletic mindset and a universal one is that it applies everywhere: in business, in relationships, in health, in money, in how we speak to ourselves on the days that things, well, they just don't go as planned. So maybe the real question is not how successful we appear, but whether the life we are building is strong enough to hold us. Nelly, thank you so much for bringing such clarity, honesty, and grounded wisdom to this conversation. And to everyone listening, may this be an invitation to rethink success, not as something you chase, but as something you build with care. Until next time, this is Health and Wealth.